All right. Today we're putting something to the test. So a little over a month ago, my buddy Matt texts me. He says, hey, I think I had what might be the best bourbon I've ever had in my life. And I was like, whoa, that's some high praise because this is a guy that collects some pretty top shelf stuff. I mean, he's the one that sent me a ton of samples of things that are, highly allocated, a lot of Buffalo Trace releases that he's got to hunt down and use connections to get. I mean, this guy's connected and he does what he's got to do to get really solid bottles, including bottle trading, all that stuff. So for him to say that, I was like, whoa, okay. This isn't something he says lightly. So we are going to put it to the test. Now, this is from the Parker's Heritage Collection. This is the 16th edition. So if you're not familiar with Parker's Heritage, this is Heaven Hill Distillery. And this is sort of their special annual release that they do. So the 16th edition, this is the 2022 release. So it was initially, I think, around $180 when it went up for sale back then. At this point, 2024, if you were to get your hands on a bottle of Parker's Heritage 16th edition, you'd probably be paying around $800 on the secondary, because that's basically the only people who still have it stocked are the people that put a ridiculous price tag on it and were totally comfortable sitting on it for a couple of years until somebody got desperate and decided to buy it for their collection. So the thing that's unique about this bottle, the Parker's Heritage 16th edition, is that it's two bourbons in one. So 67% of the bourbon in that bottle is 13-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon from Rickhouse Q, I think, for those of you who care. Rickhouse Q, I think. 13-year-old bourbon is 60% of this juice. But then they re-barreled it. They did a double barrel process for another 4 months, I think, after that in a secondary barrel, a new oak barrel, to give it even more oakiness, basically. And the remaining 33% of the juice in here is actually 15-year-old Kentucky straight bourbon from Warehouse 11. And the proof is 132.2. So super high proof, super high age, and also double barrel process in there. So this is, oh my goodness, this is a lot that went into this for sure. And now we are going to find out if it is worth all that high praise. Is this truly one of the best bourbons of all time? And if we conclude that it is, then maybe that'll put the Parker's Heritage Collection bottles on your radar. So it's at least something that you're aware of as they approach release time, and it's something you wanted to hunt down. All right, let's do this. First and foremost, visual inspection. Look at how friggin' dark that is. That is insanely dark. Holy cow. Let me put my pasty white skin behind it, and that'll let you really put it into perspective for you. Night and day, literal night and day there. At 132 proof, it looks a little oily, but not like big, thick drips or anything, which is surprising given the proof point. Let's nose this. Oh my gosh, dude. Okay, you don't want to bury the schnoz in there because it's got some heat in terms of in the ethanol department, but I get creme brulee, like that vanilla bean custard that's been caramelized on top. That burnt caramel note. I get like a cinnamon swirl bread note, like a dessert bread with that cinnamon swirl inside of it. Some great seasoned oak. And that awesome dusty warehouse quality to it as well. The nose on that is absolutely beautiful. I put this in stark contrast to the last video was the Peerless Double Oaked. And that Double Oaked Peerless was just an oak punch to the face. This has so much more complexity. The oak is ever present, but that vanilla bean pudding with the caramelized burnt sugar on top, the cinnamon swirl, and that dessert breadiness in there too. That's wonderful. All right, and with that, I'm going in on this. Cheers. Ooh, that has some heat to it. Very much leathery and tobacco notes up front on the palate. That heat comes along right behind it. And then that savory but sweet cinnamon bready note we were getting on the nose. Right there about halfway through the palate. Once the leather and the oak subside a little bit. On the finish, I think of tobacco leaves and trail mix. You know, like nuts, chocolates, dried fruits, and a whole lot of oak. Sort of like a mahogany note to this, isn't there? It is definitely a sipper at 132.2 proof. But the finish is long and lingering. Like, you don't have to power your way through this at all. You can take your time. As my palate sort of acclimates to the heat and to the oak, As I go in for follow-up sips, I get some of that creme brulee note right up front, on the very tip of my tongue, right up front on the beginning of the sip, before we quickly move into those leather and tobacco notes. Yeah. And after those follow-up sips, there's almost like this coffee grounds sort of a note in there too, which some people might like and some people might not like. I love black coffee. I grind all my beans by hand every morning, so I'm very familiar with black coffee grounds in a very positive way. I'll tell you what, this pulls no punches, that's for sure. If you like dark and savory with a little bit of sweet in there too, to offset it just a bit, hey, you might like that. I would say a little sweet, a little nutty, very oaky, very much leather and tobacco. Hey, if that sounds good to you, this would be a very special pour if you see it on a shelf in a nice bar sometime and you want to pay for a pour. I recommend that you do so. Is it worthy of being like a finalist for the best bourbon ever? Well, I think that depends very much on your palate and what you prefer, what you enjoy, what you like. I will say that it does not surprise me at all from what I know about Matt's palate that he really likes this. That is no surprise to me at all, considering he sent me stag samples, like 3 different cigar blends. He sent me that Peerless Double Oaked. It does not surprise me that this is right up his alley. I will say, I like this a lot more than that Peerless Double Oaked, because that one was like just a ton of oak. And some other things you might get a hint of as well. This is a much better balanced double oaked product. You get some of that barrel funkiness that comes with a really mature bourbon and that brulee effect, that burnt sugar. This just has a lot more going for it. I think for me and my palate, per my rating scale, I give that an 8.8. And that is a very high score for me. I think I've only ever given out 1 9, I think. And it was to the, you know what? I'm going to do a splash of it. And that was specifically to batch 205 of Joseph Magnus cigar bourbon, a cigar blend bourbon. Just a little splash of it, because I got to make this bottle last because I love it. So this one's 114.9 proof. And the reason it got that 9 from me was because it brought not just the leather and the spice and the tannic oak, but it also brought a little bit of that fruitiness in too. Some like cognac and Armagnac vibes in there, some stemmy grape right alongside it, and it's just delightful. So I would say between these two, both of them are phenomenal. I think for my palate, just a little bit of that fruitiness in there goes a long way, and I think that maybe just barely makes it edge out the Parker's Heritage 16th edition. But that being said, this is a phenomenal pour. And it all comes down to preference, doesn't it? I don't know what you think. Based on my tasting notes here, does this sound like the kind of thing that you would really get down with? Could this potentially be one of the best bourbons of all time? Sound off in the comments. Let me know what makes your top, maybe your top twos you've ever had. And bear in mind, everyone's top twos are going to be different based on a lot of different variables, like your palate, you know, what you enjoy, what you like. Your top two might be rye. They might be Irish, Scotches, Canadian blends. Maybe it's a Japanese single malt. Another variable is definitely the price that you're willing to pay for a single bottle. Some people are just unwilling to pay $100+ for a single bottle of whiskey. They like whiskey a lot, but not that much. Not enough to spend 3 figures on a bottle. And so in that case, someone might say my number one is a Booker's that I got for $80. That's perfectly fine. It all comes down to palate, preference, price, all that stuff. But I want to know, what makes your top two? Thanks so much, Matt, for sending this to me, because it's a phenomenal pour. Also, feel free to join our Discord, by the way. We love chatting in there, hanging out, sharing and swapping stories and experiences, bottle recommendations, all that stuff. And big shout out to my Patreon supporters who fund these bottles that I get to pick up and review here on the channel. You guys are carrying my channel at this point, and I appreciate it. Cheers, my friends. Oh! If you wanted to get involved in the Patreon, there's a link in the description. You can join for as little as $1 a month, just $1 a month. And it goes to helping me fund these bottles. And that's super cool of all of you guys. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.